The morning shift at St. Gabriel Medical Center always began with controlled chaos, but this Monday carried a different kind of tension. Ambulance sirens echoed through the city before sunrise, doctors rushed between trauma rooms, and exhausted nurses struggled to keep pace. Among them walked the newest member of the emergency department, a quiet woman named Evelyn Brooks. Her uniform looked perfectly ordinary, her smile was polite, and her arte sume listed only civilian nursing experience. To everyone else, she was simply another transfer trying to survive her first week. The senior nurses barely acknowledged her. A few whispered that she looked too calm to handle emergency medicine. One resident chuckled when he saw her organizing supplies with military precision. "Relax," he joked. "This isn't boot camp." Evelyn answered with a gentle smile. "No," she said softly. "Sometimes it's harder." The comment earned puzzled looks before everyone returned to work. Chief Administrator Richard Hale entered the emergency department with his usual impatience. He scanned the staff before stopping in front of Evelyn. "You're the new nurse." "Yes, sir. I've heard you're experienced, but around here experience means nothing until you've proven yourself." "I understand." "Good. Stay out of the doctor's way." Several employees smirked as he walked away. Instead of reacting, Evelyn quietly helped an elderly patient who had been waiting alone. She noticed subtle signs everyone else had missed and immediately requested additional tests. A skeptical physician reluctantly agreed. 30 minutes later, the scans revealed a life-threatening internal bleed. The patient's family burst into tears after emergency surgery saved his life. Nobody thanked Evelyn. The credit went to the physician. She simply nodded and continued working. Near lunchtime, an exhausted security officer apologized for the broken surveillance cameras covering the east entrance. "They'll be repaired tomorrow," he sighed. Evelyn looked toward the hallway. Tomorrow might be too late. The officer laughed. "You worry too much." She didn't answer. Years of experience had taught her never to ignore instincts. Outside, 3 black vans rolled slowly past the hospital before disappearing around the corner. Her eyes followed them longer than anyone noticed. Inside the pediatric ward, children laughed while volunteers handed out balloons. Families filled waiting rooms. Life felt normal again, until every light flickered. Seconds later, the emergency doors exploded inward. Masked men wearing tactical gear stormed inside carrying assault rifles. People screamed. Patients dropped to the floor. Doctors froze. One gunman fired into the ceiling. Nobody moved. The entire hospital fell silent except for crying children. Administrator Hale stepped forward, trying to sound brave. "You don't want to do this." The masked leader struck him across the face with his rifle. "We're taking control now." Security guards reached for their radios before being disarmed within seconds. Everything had happened too quickly. The attackers clearly knew the building's layout. They blocked exits, seized communication equipment, and forced staff into the main lobby. One terrified intern whispered, "How do they know exactly where everything is?" Evelyn quietly studied every movement, every formation, every command. Her breathing remained steady. Her eyes revealed something no one had seen before. She recognized their tactics. And somewhere beneath the sleeve of her nurse's uniform, hidden from everyone in that terrified hospital, an old military insignia rested against her skin, waiting for the moment it would finally have to be revealed. The gunmen forced dozens of patients, doctors, nurses, and visitors into the hospital lobby, shouting orders with practiced precision. Panic spread like wildfire. Mothers clutched their children, elderly patients trembled in wheelchairs, and even experienced surgeons struggled to stay calm. Administrator Hale wiped blood from his face and stared helplessly at the armed men who had taken complete control in less than 2 minutes. The masked leader spoke into his radio. "Every entrance is secure. Find the package. Nobody leaves alive if we don't get it." The words sent chills through the room. Evelyn lowered her eyes, pretending to be frightened like everyone else. But her mind was calculating distances, counting weapons, identifying blind spots, and memorizing every face. She recognized the formation immediately. These weren't ordinary criminals. They had military training. One young nurse whispered through tears, "We're going to die." Evelyn squeezed her hand gently. "Not today." The nurse looked at her in confusion. There was no fear in Evelyn's voice, only quiet certainty. Moments later, one of the gunmen stormed into the intensive care unit and dragged out a wounded intelligence officer who had been admitted the previous night under a false identity. The attackers had come for him. "Tell us where the drive is," the leader demanded. The injured man spat blood onto the floor. "I'd rather die." The rifle was raised toward his head. Before the trigger could be pulled, Evelyn stepped forward. "He's losing too much blood," she said calmly. "Kill him now, and you'll never get your answers." The leader narrowed his eyes. "And why should I believe a nurse?" "Because if he goes into shock, his heart will stop within minutes." The gunman hesitated. Finally, he nodded. "You've got 5 minutes." As Evelyn knelt beside the wounded officer, she quietly checked his pulse while pretending to adjust his bandages. Without moving her lips, she whispered, "Alpha shield still active." His exhausted eyes widened. "General, is that really you?" She answered almost invisibly, Stay alive. The officer's breathing steadied. Across the room, another gunman noticed the brief exchange. What did he call you? Evelyn looked up without hesitation. He said, help me, he's barely conscious. The gunman accepted the explanation and walked away. But the intelligence officer knew the truth. Years earlier, General Evelyn Brooks had commanded one of the Army's most respected Special Operations medical brigades. Official records claimed she had retired after a classified mission that saved hundreds of soldiers. Very few people knew her face. Even fewer knew she had chosen to disappear into civilian life after losing members of her command. She had hoped never to wear the burden of leadership again. That hope had just ended. Quietly, she slipped a tiny emergency locator from the officer's medical blanket into her pocket. It still functioned. While pretending to replace an IV line, she activated it with a single press. Hundreds of miles away, inside a secure military operations center, an encrypted alarm suddenly flashed across a command screen. The duty officer froze. Impossible, he whispered. The transmission carried an authentication code that had not been used in 8 years. Only one person in the world possessed that code. The screen displayed 2 words that instantly changed the atmosphere inside the room. Inside the military operations center, silence lasted only a heartbeat before alarms echoed through every corridor. Senior commanders rushed toward the command table as the encrypted signal continued transmitting from St. Gabriel Medical Center. A colonel stared at the authentication code before speaking with disbelief. It's genuine. Another officer shook his head. General Brooks retired years ago. She retired, the colonel replied. She never surrendered her oath. Within minutes, helicopters lifted into the sky carrying an elite rescue force. Their mission was simple: protect the hospital, follow General Brooks' commands. Back inside the hospital, the terrorists grew impatient. They searched every room but failed to find the encrypted drive hidden inside a portable heart monitor beside the intelligence officer's bed. Furious, the leader ordered his men to prepare an execution. Every 5 minutes, someone dies until we get what we came for. Children began crying. Families embraced one another. Even the doctors lowered their heads, believing the end had come. Evelyn stepped forward once more. You're making a mistake. The leader laughed. A nurse is giving me tactical advice. No, she answered quietly. An army general is. The room froze. Slowly, Evelyn rolled back her sleeve, revealing the faded insignia tattoo of her former command. The wounded intelligence officer struggled to his feet and saluted despite his injuries. General on deck. Every military-trained attacker instinctively looked toward her. That single moment of hesitation was all she needed. Now. She slammed a metal emergency cart into 2 gunmen while another nurse pulled the fire alarm. Sprinklers erupted overhead, filling the corridors with noise and confusion. Patients crawled toward cover as security officers recovered dropped weapons. The terrorists fought back, but their carefully planned assault collapsed. Evelyn anticipated every movement because she had trained commanders more skilled than the men standing before her. Outside, military helicopters thundered over the hospital. Ropes dropped from hovering aircraft as special operations soldiers entered through the roof. Explosions shattered locked entrances, and within seconds the rescue teams linked up with Evelyn. The commanding officer removed his helmet the instant he saw her. General Brooks. At ease, she replied. Protect the civilians. Yes, ma'am. The final gunman attempted to escape through the pediatric ward, grabbing a frightened little girl as a shield. Drop your weapons, he screamed. Evelyn walked toward him alone. You don't want to hurt her. Stay back. You're surrounded. This ends only one way. For a moment his hands trembled. The little girl suddenly stomped on his foot exactly as Evelyn had quietly instructed. He flinched. Evelyn moved with astonishing speed, disarming him before he could recover. Soldiers rushed forward and secured the terrorist without firing a single shot. The hospital erupted in relieved applause. Parents hugged their children. Doctors stared in stunned silence at the quiet nurse they had underestimated only hours earlier. Administrator Hale approached with tears in his eyes. I judged you without knowing who you were. Evelyn smiled gently. Respect should never depend on rank. Weeks later, the hospital unveiled a small plaque honoring every employee who had shown courage that day. At the very top was one simple name: Evelyn Brooks. There was no mention of medals, classified missions, or the stars she once wore on her uniform. She requested only one title: nurse, because she believed the greatest leaders never sought recognition. They simply answered when people needed them most. If this story reminded you that true heroes often wear the simplest uniforms, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable stories where courage is revealed when the world least expects it.